The last rays of sunlight cast a golden glow over the polished wood floors of our Seattle penthouse. I stood motionless, watching myself in the same mirror where my wife, Lily, was adjusting her dress. The red fabric hugged her figure in a way that was more provocative than anything a corporate spouse would typically wear to an event like tonight. I noted it with the same analytical precision that had made me one of the most sought-after consultants in cybersecurity. At 46, I still maintained a certain presence in my tailored black suit, a result of years of martial arts and dedicated workouts that had kept me fit. But it was my mind, sharper than any blade, that had built my firm into a dominant force. "You know how important tonight is," I said, my voice calm and steady. "For this deal, we need to look professional. That dress doesn't send the right message." Lily's fingers traced over the dress's fabric, smoothing it with a deliberate slowness that didn't escape me. "It's always about your image, isn't it, Ethan?" she replied, reaching for a bold shade of red lipstick. "Maybe, for once, I just want to feel beautiful." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Not everything revolves around your business." Her words hung in the air, a bitter edge that hit harder than I wanted to admit. For years, I had built a career around spotting irregularities. The smallest discrepancy could mean a system breach, and lately, the discrepancies in my own life had started adding up. Her sudden late nights, personal training sessions that somehow always ran late, phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room, new jewelry, which she claimed she'd owned forever. Every detail had begun to fall into a pattern. I didn't respond, just checked my phone. A message from Paul, my head of security, confirmed what I already suspected. The surveillance team was in place. I'd hired Paul 8 years ago, drawn by his background in special operations and his dedication. Where I was cold precision, Paul was unyielding strength, someone I could rely on without question. "I need to take care of some things at the office before the event," I said, adjusting the platinum cufflinks I'd once cherished as her anniversary gift to me. Now, they felt like a cruel irony. "I'll see you there." Lily barely looked up, too engrossed in her preparations. Her indifference wasn't new, but it seemed sharper now. Maybe I was finally willing to see it. As I left the room, I opened a secure line to Paul. "Execute Protocol 7, I said. "Full surveillance, no restrictions. I want eyes and ears on everything." I could hear a flicker of hesitation in Paul's voice. "Sir, that's an extreme level of monitoring. The resources required. Just do it," I cut in. "You have full authorization. And Paul, this stays strictly between us." As I descended the stairs, passing the photos of family vacations and moments that now seemed like props in a stage play, a sense of unease settled over me. I'd built this life around integrity, values, and loyalty. My consulting firm wasn't just a job. It was a legacy I'd planned to pass down one day. But now, as I watched Lily prepare for what she assumed was just another gala, I felt the ground shifting beneath me. Outside, my car waited in the driveway, a sleek black Mercedes reflecting the twilight. I slid into the driver's seat, and my phone buzzed again with a message from Paul. "Surveillance active. You want to see this?" Instead of heading to the office, I redirected to our secure monitoring facility across town. The building was nondescript from the outside, but inside, the walls were lined with screens displaying live feeds from every angle imaginable. I settled in, watching as Lily made her grand entrance at the gala, the red dress pulling every gaze in the room. Within minutes, she found her way to Ryan Baxter, my supposed best friend and business partner. Watching the feed, I felt a cold resolve harden inside me, each word and gesture between Lily and Ryan confirming what I'd feared. This was no mistake, no one-off. They were deeply entangled, and the audacity of their actions in public, barely concealing their affair, struck me like a slap. "Come here often, stranger?" Lily's voice rang out as she approached Ryan at the bar, her hand grazing his arm in a way that felt too familiar. His fingers found their way to her waist, concealed by the bar's angle. "You're pushing your luck tonight, Lil, in that dress," Ryan murmured, his tone a blend of admiration and caution. "Ethan still has no clue," she whispered, leaning close enough that her lips nearly touched his ear. "The shell companies are all set. Once the merger wraps up next week, it's a whole new game. The accounts are prepped. Ryan's voice dripped with greed as he replied, all lined up. Samantha confirmed the last transfers yesterday. It's foolproof. Ethan's so focused on protecting the company from outside threats, he never thought to look inside his own home. I felt my fingers tighten around the edge of my desk just as Paul entered, tablet in hand, and his face shadowed with concern. Sir, our team's uncovered more than just an affair. You need to see this. A flood of files filled the screens, each revelation more devastating than the last. The merger with Grant Nichols' firm wasn't about expansion. It was a meticulous trap, set to strip my company from within. Lily wasn't just involved with Ryan. She was the centerpiece of a scheme that reached far deeper than I'd ever guessed. Grant, Ryan, and even my own brother, Daniel, were part of it. There's more, Paul said, bringing up another set of files. Your daughter Mandy's behavioral changes? Her slipping grades, rebellion, and sudden distance? We've found proof that Mrs. Hartley has been actively working to sabotage your relationship with both kids. Footage began to play on the screens. Lily in close discussions with Mandy's teachers, casting doubt on my commitment to our family. Text messages showed her meticulously setting up situations to drive my children away. She had even intercepted and modified messages between me and my son, Ben, who was away at college. Show me everything, I commanded, my voice carrying the lethal calm of a storm waiting to break. Over the next hour, Paul and I dissected layer after layer of deceit, unraveling a conspiracy that had been years in the making. Lily's betrayal extended beyond our marriage. She had devised a complete invasion of my life. The gala footage continued to play, showing her laughing, dancing, lost in her assumed triumph. As dawn approached, I dived deeper into hidden accounts and encrypted files, each discovery another blow to the foundation of trust I'd built. Daniel had been conducting phantom projects in our R&D department, siphoning millions into fake research initiatives. The trail led offshore, obscured but not beyond my reach. Ryan's treachery was extensive. He had been selling our proprietary information to competitors, using the proceeds to fund lavish Mediterranean getaways with Lily. Their affair hadn't been recent. Bank statements linked them for 3 years. Lily's part, though, was the most sinister. She had compiled compromising material on key board members, forming a blackmail dossier that would secure her control of Hartley Consulting once they forced me out. As my wife, she had access to it all: inside information, relationships, and the authority to subtly undermine my leadership. Then Paul revealed the last bitter twist: Samantha, my sister-in-law. She had set up an entire shadow company based on stolen Hartley Consulting patents, primed to launch rival products the moment I was ousted. Sir, Paul said, returning with more documents. We've confirmed the timing. Her dress tonight, it wasn't just a choice for attention. They're celebrating. The merger announcement was meant to signal your defeat. They think they've won. I moved to the window, looking out over the city's lights. In the reflection, the monitors behind me showed Lily and Ryan, sharing another intimate moment, and Daniel, cozying up to investors. Samantha watched from across the room, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. Activate Protocol Zero, I instructed, my voice leaving no room for hesitation. Paul didn't attempt to mask his concern. Sir, Protocol Zero, there'll be extensive collateral damage. Reputations, careers, families. They sealed their own fate the moment they involved my kids, I said, turning to face the window, the city lights and monitors casting a hard glow across my expression. They weren't just after my company. They were after my legacy. Execute Protocol Zero. From the cameras, I could see Lily laughing with Ryan, their hands casually intertwined under the table. Their overconfidence was palpable. They believed they had outplayed me, unaware that I'd planned for this very scenario. At midnight, the first phase of Protocol Zero was set into motion. With Protocol Zero activated, I watched as encrypted locks sealed company data. Assets shifted instantly into secure trusts, and dormant contract clauses sprang to life, binding millions in a web of legal barriers. Every safeguard I'd built was now in play. By the time Lily swayed to what she assumed was her victory song with Ryan, I had already taken control of every shell company they'd built. Brooke, my assistant of nearly a decade, worked steadily in the adjacent office, gathering critical documents and securing my children's futures. Mandy, who was at a friend's for the night, had been discreetly contacted. She was now in safe hands, and Ben's college funds had been transferred into protected trusts that Lily couldn't reach. As I watched the final pieces snap into place, I recalled Lily's words from earlier. Maybe I want to feel beautiful for once. At that moment, draped over Ryan and plotting my ruin, she had never appeared uglier. As dawn approached, I finalized the last details. While Lily reveled in her imagined victory, divorce papers were delivered to our home, alongside evidence of her crimes distributed to a select group on the board. The man Lily believed she'd manipulated was gone, but Ethan Hartley, the man who built an empire by recognizing the patterns others overlooked, was still here and very, very angry. The night of the gala wouldn't go down as the start of my downfall. It would be remembered as the catalyst for the most calculated retaliation Seattle had ever seen. The pulse of music filled the grand ballroom of the Intercontinental, syncing seamlessly with each precise stage of my plan. In the server room, my cybersecurity team enacted a complex set of protocols to ensure there was no escape for the conspirators. Lines of code streamed across screens as sensitive company data locked under military-grade encryption, while custom algorithms began rerouting millions into secure, untraceable accounts. Through the feeds, I watched as Lily twirled in Ryan's arms, her red dress a startling flash against the marble floor. Neither of them noticed their phones drop signal momentarily, as all their access to the shell company's accounts was permanently revoked. "Sir, Phase 1 is complete," my lead IT specialist reported. "Offshore accounts redirected. All Phantom protocols are in place." I nodded, illuminated by the monitor's blue glow. "Initiate the contract triggers." Beside me, Brooke worked with steady precision. For months, she'd quietly gathered the evidence, picking up on discrepancies in board minutes and suspicious patterns in company communications. Now, she ensured every document was securely archived, with backups on servers that only I could access. "Mr. Hartley," Brooke said, looking up from her screen, "Mandy is secure. The team confirmed she's chosen to leave with you. She's furious about what her mother did." A flash of emotion broke through my stoic exterior. My daughter had inherited my analytical nature, and once presented with the truth, altered messages, staged conflicts, manufactured friction. She made her decision with calm resolve. "And Ben?" I asked. "The trust is fully established and funded. His college finances are secure," Brooke replied. "He's safe, though he hasn't been told the full story yet. We thought it best to wait until his finals are over." I turned to Paul, who stood by the door. "Initiate Phase 2. While Lily laughed, savoring her perceived triumph, my team executed a chain of precision-timed operations, ensuring all company data was sealed under newly activated encryption. The celebration she thought marked her success would instead be her undoing. Millions of dollars in assets were legally moving through secure channels, and pre-negotiated contract clauses gave me immediate control over each of the shell companies. Emergency board protocols concentrated decision-making power directly in the CEO's hands, enabling him to swiftly reclaim his assets. All surveillance data was backed up and stored across multiple secure locations. By midnight, as Lily raised her champagne glass among her allies, I had secured control of every asset they assumed they'd stolen. Their irony-laden celebration wasn't lost on me. They were toasting their own destruction. "The divorce papers are being delivered now," Brooke confirmed, along with carefully selected evidence packages to specific board members. I loosened my tie, feeling the weight of the final moments. "Distribute the remaining files. It's time." Before dawn cast its first light over Seattle, Ethan Hartley, the man they believed they'd outmaneuvered, had vanished. My disappearance was as precise as every other move. No trace, no trail, and absolutely no loose ends. Lily's return home would be her first encounter with a new reality. She would find every account emptied or frozen, the divorce papers detailing her infidelity and conspiracy, and her carefully built reputation in pieces. Evidence of her crimes would be in the hands of the board members she had tried to manipulate. Her access to any company resources was revoked, and slowly, her carefully constructed world began to crumble. The first fractures appeared at dawn. Ryan Baxter stood in his private office, staring at his monitor in shock. Every offshore account was empty. Years of carefully hidden funds gone. His phone buzzed nonstop with alerts. Access denied. Transfer failed. Account suspended. What the hell is happening? He barked into the phone, all of his smooth sophistication lost. Fix this. Now! But there was nothing left to fix. The funds hadn't been stolen. They'd been legally reclaimed. Each dollar pulled back by a web of contract clauses so intricate his lawyers were in a frenzy, just trying to unravel them. Across town, Daniel Hartley watched as federal auditors marched into his office, carrying stacks of files and records for each ghost project, fraudulent transaction, and fake research initiative he'd concocted to siphon millions. His attempt to reach Samantha went straight to voicemail. But she was preoccupied with her own disaster. Her shadow company, built on stolen patents from Hartley Consulting, was not only facing litigation, but was practically obliterated by emergency injunctions that froze all assets. Cease and desist orders poured in by the dozen, and her technical team found themselves locked out of critical data. But it was Grant Nichols who cracked first. The seasoned executive recognized a lost cause when he saw one, and he quickly contacted federal investigators, offering evidence of Lily's involvement in corporate espionage in exchange for immunity. His betrayal was swift, ruthless, and self-serving, exactly as I had anticipated. Lily's social downfall was satisfying to watch unfold. Those so-called friends, once desperate to gain her approval, now left her calls unanswered. I knew Claudia Marino, our corporate counsel and a leading figure in Seattle society, was among the first to distance herself. Watching that, I knew I had executed my plan well. The same crowd that had admired Lily's red dress at the gala now whispered about her disgrace at every charity event. I don't know what you're talking about, Ryan declared when questioned about their relationship. Mrs. Hartley was merely the wife of a board member. These allegations are ridiculous. He threw her under the bus so quickly it left marks. Watching him deny their connection on live television, Lily finally realized that she hadn't just been outmaneuvered by me. She had been betrayed by her own co-conspirators. Time became my sharpest weapon. My enemies expected immediate retribution. But I had something far more excruciating planned. A slow, deliberate dismantling of each of their lives. Like a seasoned chess player, I had arranged moves that would play out over years. Daniel's collapse came first. Over 18 months, my algorithms created the appearance of unfortunate market crashes. Each one targeted his investments with precise accuracy, making it seem like terrible luck. By the end of 2 years, Daniel Hartley, once a millionaire executive, was selling his home to cover his expenses. It's just a string of bad luck, Daniel told his wife, looking down at another margin call notice. The market's volatile, he added. But it wasn't luck. It was me, operating behind layers of proxies and shell companies, using Daniel's greed to dismantle him. Every time he thought he'd found a safe investment, invisible hands shifted the market just enough to undo him. Samantha's downfall took longer, but it was far more complete. Her company withstood the initial wave of patent lawsuits, but then things started to go wrong. Critical servers failed at essential moments, and potential clients received anonymous warnings of severe security vulnerabilities. Sudden, unexplained cyber attacks began to target Samantha's company, leaking just enough of her stolen technology to unsettle investors. There's no identifiable source for these incidents, her security team reported. It's like we're cursed. 3 years in, the weight of litigation and technical failures brought Samantha's company to its knees. The industry's response was swift. She was effectively blacklisted. No reputable firm would touch an executive with her track record of incompetence. Ryan's fall from grace turned into a public spectacle, a slow, humiliating parade of his affairs. First Lily, then others, each revelation hitting him harder than the last. Watching it unfold, I almost felt a grim satisfaction. His attempts to deny the accusations only deepened the damage, especially when time-stamped photos and videos surfaced, proving his lies. "I assure you, these claims are entirely unfounded," he declared to reporters, only to have damning evidence appear the next day, showing precisely what he had denied. Meanwhile, Lily's attempts to tap into my fortune ran into wall after wall. Every legal angle was met with ironclad proof of her criminal actions. Her lawyers kept resigning as new conflicts of interest arose mysteriously. She even tried to sell her story to the press, but each attempt backfired spectacularly when journalists received undeniable proof of her deceit. As my enemies scrambled for stability, I was quietly rebuilding, operating under different aliases and through a network of corporations. I began constructing a new empire. My children thrived, each under my guidance. Mandy discovered her gift for cybersecurity, quickly rising as a respected voice in the field. Ben excelled in corporate law, his understanding of business strategy honed by witnessing my precision firsthand. Both of them understood the truth. I hadn't abandoned them. I had simply freed them from a toxic past. I kept my operations airtight. For 6 years, they never even glimpsed my whereabouts, let alone my new identity. Each time I checked in on them, though, they looked a little worse off, a little more rattled. The irony of them searching for me while I watched them scramble felt too perfect. They'd become like lab rats in a maze of their own making, oblivious to the fact that every dead end was intentional. I tracked their movements through surveillance networks, watching their futile struggles as I systematically closed every door they attempted to open. My new corporation, Nova Technologies, expanded quietly, absorbing the assets from each of their faltering ventures. Every acquisition was legitimate, logical, and carefully untraceable to me. In the end, I wasn't merely dismantling their present. I was building my future, using the remnants of their empires as the foundation. They were oblivious, too distracted by their own crumbling lives to notice their former assets fueling my success. Daniel took on increasingly low-paying consulting jobs. Samantha relocated to smaller apartments each year. Ryan found his reputation so tarnished that even the most desperate startups turned him away. And Lily's attempts to leverage her former social status met with one humiliating failure after another. For 6 years, I operated with mechanical precision. Every move was calculated, every consequence measured. This was not a simple act of vengeance. It was the creation of a legacy. For 6 years, I was a ghost in their machines, the unseen hand guiding their every misfortune. They grew paranoid, looking over their shoulders, haunted by shadows, and slowly losing their sanity as everything they touched turned to ruin. They didn't know the truth. This was just the prelude. The real endgame was still to come. At precisely 10:32 a.m., the security cameras captured Lily's arrival. 6 years had not been kind to her. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by poorly fitting off-the-rack outfits that tried too hard to look luxurious. Her once-styled hair showed streaks of gray, and makeup couldn't quite mask the bitterness etched deep into her face. Clutching the hand of a small boy, 5 years old, dark-haired, with Ryan's distinct nose, she approached the front desk of the towering glass headquarters of Nova Technologies. "My empire, built from the ashes of my enemy's ambition. I need to see Ethan Hartley," Lily announced, her voice carrying the same entitled tone she'd used at the gala 6 years ago. "Tell him his wife is here." The receptionist, fully prepared for this moment, replied with a polite, practiced neutrality. "I'm sorry, Mom. There's no Ethan Hartley here." "Ex-wife," Lily corrected, fumbling through her purse. "And I know he's here. This building, this company, it's all his. The boy needs to meet his father." Security cameras tracked her movements through the lobby. 60 floors above, I watched the scene play out on my monitors, DNA test results already open on my tablet. Tests I'd arranged months ago through my surveillance network showed the boy's genetic profile alongside Ryan's. A conclusive 99.9% match. "She's getting desperate," Paul observed from his place by the door. "A paternity claim after 6 years?" I allowed myself a slight smile. "Ryan knows about the boy. He abandoned them both 3 years ago. My sources confirmed he's been dodging child support, through shell companies. The trust you set up for the child has been covering their basic needs, Paul added, though Lily hasn't exactly been an attentive parent. We've documented missed doctor appointments, unexplained school absences. I nodded. Everything was unfolding precisely as I'd anticipated. Lily's attempt to pull off a fake paternity claim was about to become another weapon in my arsenal. "Sir," came my assistant Brooke's voice over the intercom. "Mrs. Black is becoming insistent." I pressed a button, switching the monitor feed to the lobby, where Lily was visibly growing agitated. "You tell Ethan that Thomas is his son," she demanded, her voice rising. "We were together the night before he disappeared. He has responsibilities." Thomas shrank back, clearly familiar with his mother's outbursts. My surveillance had documented countless scenes like this. Lily's public meltdowns, her neglect, her attempts to use the boy as leverage against both Ryan and me. "Show them up," I said coolly. "It's time to end this." 10 minutes later, Lily stormed into my office, dragging Thomas behind her. She froze at the sight of me, barely appearing a day older than I had when I'd vanished, while failure had visibly aged her. "You've been here all along," she whispered, stunned. "Right under our noses." "Take a seat, Lily," I said calmly. "We need to discuss Thomas's future. Specifically, why you've been neglecting the child support payments Lisa, Ryan's sister, sends for him." Lily's face went pale. "How did you?" "I've been watching. I've seen you squander that money on one get-rich-quick scheme after another. I've documented every missed teacher conference, every skipped doctor's appointment, every time you left him on his own to chase rumors about my supposed fortune." I turned my tablet to face her, showing the DNA results. "Thomas isn't mine, Lily, but unlike his real father, I've made sure he has food, shelter, and an education through a trust one established. The same trust you've repeatedly misused. You can't prove. I can prove everything." With the press of a button, screens around the office lit up, displaying surveillance footage, financial records, and medical reports. The only question is what happens next. As Lily's composure crumbled, she seemed to forget all about Thomas, who walked over to the framed red dress in the corner of my office. I watched him study it curiously, completely unaware of the storm brewing around him and the utter disintegration of his mother's last desperate scheme. It was almost ironic that he, the one innocent in all of this, was left to make sense of the aftermath she'd brought on herself. 1 week later, 5 black cars pulled up outside Nova Technologies headquarters. Each passenger had received an invitation they couldn't refuse. Ryan entered first, and I had to stifle a laugh. He'd come, even dressed in a knockoff suit, a pitiful imitation of the luxury he once flaunted so smugly. Bankrupt and defeated, he'd swallowed enough pride to walk right into what he probably sensed was a trap. Behind him, my brother, Daniel, shuffled in, still in his security guard's uniform. It was almost poetic, really, seeing him reduced to this state because of his own greed. 6 years of orchestrated financial disasters had left him with little more than resentment. Samantha stepped out next, clutching a briefcase filled with legal papers related to her pending criminal charges. Her once confident stride was gone, replaced by anxious glances over her shoulder. Grant Nichols arrived fourth, his immunity deal in tatters as new evidence mounted against him. His usual swagger was replaced by the look of a man watching his carefully crafted lies fall apart. Finally, Lily entered, still reeling from her failed paternity ploy. She had received custody papers earlier that morning. Ryan's sister Lisa had filed for custody of Thomas, armed with substantial evidence of Lily's neglect. The lobby directory indicated their destination as Executive Suite B, private hearing. None of them realized that each guard, receptionist, and staff member they passed had been carefully chosen for this day. I watched their approach on the monitors. Beside me stood my inner circle, each ready to play their part. Mandy, now 24, had become a skilled cybersecurity expert, her tablet displaying years of data tracking her mother's betrayals. Ben, fresh out of law school, held the documents that captured every facet of Daniel's crimes. His uncle's betrayal had been the foundation of Ben's understanding of corporate law. Brooke, now promoted to COO, held files documenting Samantha's corporate espionage. Every stolen patent, every secret deal, and every hidden transaction. Paul remained by the door, prepared to present evidence of Ryan's multiple betrayals, while Claudia Marino, our corporate counsel, stood with records of the group's collusion. The conspirators entered the executive suite one by one, each avoiding eye contact with the others. The room's design was intentional. A long table with high-backed chairs, all facing a massive screen that remained dark. "Please be seated," came my voice from hidden speakers. The screen flickered on, showing me seated in my office. Before any of them could react, however, the doors of the suite opened, and I entered in person. The image on the screen had been a final misdirection, a reminder of how easily they'd been manipulated. 6 years, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. 6 years of watching you destroy yourselves with your own greed and arrogance. "You bastard," Ryan snarled, attempting to rise, but Paul's hand on his shoulder forced him back down. "Interesting choice of words, Ryan," I replied unfazed, especially coming from someone who abandoned his own son. Lily's face paled. Daniel's security uniform seemed to tighten around his chest, and Samantha's hand trembled on her briefcase. "This isn't about revenge," I continued. "It's about justice, consequences, the truth." I nodded toward my team. Mandy was the first to step forward, her tablet casting its display onto the screen. "Mother, would you like to explain these recordings?" Mandy's voice was unyielding. "The ones showing how you sabotaged my relationship with Dad?" The color drained from Lily's face as her own voice echoed through the room, detailing her careful orchestration of conflicts, manipulations, and attempts to drive a wedge between her children and me. Next, Ben took his turn. "Uncle Daniel," he said, addressing him formally, "the authorities have shown a special interest in these transaction records. They're particularly curious about what you did with the money." Watching my team present their findings one by one, I felt a swell of satisfaction. Brooke took the lead, dismantling Samantha's supposed business prowess